Today, Jeremy and Justin sit down and talk about the pathway of Jesus. What does it look like to be exploring, building, owning, or thriving in your faith? And what does it look like to find yourself or an organization off of the path? But most importantly, it seems that Jeremy and Justin downloaded a sound effects package for the Riff. They now have a recorded audience that will cheer and laugh anytime they want. Great. We hope today is helpful and hopeful. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to another episode of The Riff. We've been waiting in your device for you to open us up.
And here we are.
Is that weird?
No, well.
It didn't sound weird when I thought it.
No, I mean, when you listen to it, it sounds a bit weird.
Yeah, but we're glad you're here. And I'm with Justin today. Again, Justin is a multi-time winner of the People's Choice Award here at The Riff. People like you, man. They do.
Was there a trophy I missed?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah. No, I just wondered.
But it is interesting, and I don't want to go down there, but I saw an advertisement.
Okay.
Speaking of trophies.
Okay.
And our non-sponsored favorite sponsor is BJ's Trophy.
Yeah, BJ's Trophy.
And they did have an advertisement without the apostrophe the other day. So I saw that, and I just wanted to report.
Have you heard them?
On that.
Was it like a radio or was it just like print?
It was print.
Okay. So you didn't hear them say BJS?
No, but I could clearly see there's no apostrophe.
Sometimes I wouldn't say I'm the best at grammar. Sometimes I don't put an apostrophe on Justin's stuff, which is add an S. Like if I've got a bunch of milk in the fridge.
However, if you're talking about multiple Justins and it was the Justin's stuff, you'd put the apostrophe after the S.
I don't even put the apostrophe. That's what I'm saying. Like I just need the S. And maybe BJ.
See that? Honestly, I think that discredits the whole. You can't ignore an apostrophe. But today we are talking. We're talking about pathways, right?
Talking about pathways.
Because we're in a series.
Pathway series. And I've got some fascinating questions for you.
Okay, well, let's catch people up real quick. Pathway. When we say pathway, what we're trying to do is talk about this journey of following Jesus, which I do believe starts before you surrender your life to Jesus. I believe that we're always on this journey. One of the interesting things about North Point, and when we talk discipleship, I was talking to someone just recently he's a pastor and had been a pastor and was at North Point and was saying, hey, so I love North Point, da, 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 da. And then he said, hey, talk to me about your discipleship. What do you do for discipleship? And I said, well, it's interesting. We're trying to resource people as much as possible so that we can all follow Jesus. And we think, there's a lot of elements. I walked through the top 5 things I wish we could, see in the life of every North Pointer, which is episode 2. But, that we would have arrows pointed out in serving others, that we would have someone that were really reflecting the love of Jesus too, who doesn't have a relationship with Jesus, that we would have Christian community, that we would have a daily time of scripture integration, and that we would have a constant awareness or prompts throughout the day, awareness of the Spirit of God speaking to us. So discipleship is resourcing those 5 areas. We don't fundamentally look at discipleship as programmatic at North Point. That doesn't mean we don't have programs. It doesn't mean we don't have groups. It doesn't mean we don't have different serving opportunities. So we have those, but if discipleship is what we offer in programs, it's probably not enough for the thousands of people who call North Point home. But if we can provide certainly events and classes and different things that help those things. But what we want to do is provide resources so that we just believe a holistic journey towards Jesus involves these 5 things. That's the pathway. So that's what we're talking about. And so we also think the pathway starts earlier, that discipleship could be someone deciding they're going to listen to scripture and they don't have a relationship with Jesus. And that's a step of discipleship because you're taking a step towards being open and or following Jesus. So
that's right. And we even have walked through that of not necessarily labeling or identifying, but helping put people into a space that we can resource even more. Yeah. So a person that might be in that space, we would call exploring. And then what we've done is we've said, all right, we're going to make sure that we are able to resource directly to a person that might be in that kind of a space. And there's 4 different spaces that we've identified that we're trying to just get better at helping people where they are. Right. And not necessarily kind of what you're saying, like, all right, well, this is the path. You got to take a right turn here and then a left here. It's like, we really, really are praying that you see Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? Like through this process, wherever you are on this path or pathway, we just want you to see Jesus.
So walk us through, it isn't like a pop quiz, but walk us through these areas.
Ebot.
Yep. E-dot.
Ebot.
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 So for those who don't speak Klingon, give us...
Exploring, building, owning, thriving.
Okay.
So there's those 4 different areas that inside of that, you're exploring a faith, you're owning a faith, you're thriving. Like there's all of these different spaces that we talk about. And it's not like, just get to thriving. Just get to the T on
We'll have a thriving ceremony.
It's just going to be, like
We
you get a
nominate.
medal. It's a T on it. It's going to be awesome.
From BJS.
But it does help you see, man, if I'm in that space, if I am thriving, one of those big resources is then how to help people on that exploring space, right? How are you mentoring? How are you leading groups? How are you leading this or that? So it's not necessarily this hierarchy of spirituality. It is an awareness of spirituality. And it's awareness of where you are. And we do this for everything. You do this for your physical health. You do this for a marriage. You do this for a relationship. You already are seeing things. So it's not like this weird systematic, like get better at faith. It's not that. It's an awareness. It's an awareness. It's an awareness. It's an awareness. So those are the spaces that we're in. Those are what we're looking at. We're just trying to help.
Yeah. What's interesting is, we don't grab hold of tightly the systems. And so when we also realize there are so many people who are in different areas. So my hope is that everybody takes a step along their pathway. And so if they are in a spot where they're really focusing on becoming like Jesus, right? That might like different for someone than for someone who is trying to own their faith, or someone who's exploring, saying, I'm open to it. So we want to create a safe spot where someone who's exploring feels equally challenged with a totally different application. And so as a church, I'm not preaching to one application. I'm hoping that I'm preaching to one path, and that everybody then would translate, what is my application with this direction? Mm-hmm. So we preach the direction, we ask God to speak, and then we challenge everyone, what's your next step in your pathway?
So as we go through this series, as we talk about the ways of Jesus, and I've got a couple of questions that... A couple of things of like, how do you know you're on that path? Yeah. Right? Because we've seen, if you read or watch anything in America, it seems that Jesus is on a lot of different paths, meaning you find him in a lot of different areas. So some of those areas being documentaries that are like, wait, this is the path of Jesus? Like or an article where you're like, what, that pastor was on the path of Jesus? Like that's the path? Or he was off the path. He's got to be off the path, right? She's got to be off the path. There's all of these questions that surround and swirl of what does it really look like? When do paths become dangerous, right? Meaning you can be really, really sold out to a path of Jesus and it be a little bit off the path of Jesus. Yeah. So I just want to walk kind of through this wide thing that we call Christianity in America. Yeah. And just kind of ask you some questions on that. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know, maybe riff on it.
Let's riff on it.
You said it in there?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
All right. That.
So just tell me something that you have seen somebody starting on a path, an organization starting on a path, someone starting on a path that was genuine and intentionally focused on following the path of Jesus and somehow got sidetracked, but still believed they were on the path of Jesus.
Okay. Well, one I've been a big part of an organization, a church that definitely strayed from the path that we had been on. So I could tell that story, in the sense of, so before I came to North Point, I was at a church in Seattle, East Lake. I was executive pastor there, and which means my role, I wasn't the lead person, but I had a lot of influence, access, and responsibility given from our lead pastor, and I was overseeing ministries, and then we had another executive pastor who was overseeing operations. whatnot. Anyway, when I went there, it was a pretty big church. It had been a church plant 7 years or so. It had been 7 years that it had been planted, but it was like 3,000 people. It was booming. I had previously been speaking at the church every couple of months as a teaching pastor. But that was when I was in a season of traveling, and I just love that church because I'm telling you, Justin, I've never seen anything like that. Like baptisms, when people are getting baptized, they're people that, like I was used to most of the baptisms were people who are just aging up to be able to get baptized, but they're from the Christian church families. Yeah. Not a lot of like people who didn't have church experience, but when I'm watching these baptisms, I'm seeing people come into the tank left and right, who faith was new to them. And they're the type of people that you would see in your neighborhood, everywhere. Normal people without church experience, finding and hearing Jesus and falling in love with Jesus, transforming their lives and saying, I want to follow him. And I'd never seen anything like that. The weekends were powerful. They had stripped themselves of a lot of Christian culture, but they were dripping with the Christian message of Jesus. I loved it. Absolutely. It was my favorite place to speak. I mean, I'm seeing like so many influential people in the Seattle area are trusting this place to bring their friends, whether they're athletes or they're business people. It's like this became a poppin' spot where people are hearing Jesus. It was fresh. Methods were different. They didn't take themselves seriously, but they took the message of Jesus very seriously. So there came a spot where they invited me to be on the team and come in and provide leadership for ministries. And so I did that. We left the road, and this is what we were going to do. And I was there for 3 years, and we went multi-site during this time, went from 1 campus to 8 campuses during this time. And our leader, phenomenal communicator, phenomenal leader. And this momentum kept growing. And it got to the spot where it was 5,000 people, 8 different campuses. And I remember having the conversation with him because one of my roles was I came from a very much of a church background, church staff background. And even at the time, I was just in a bunch of church world. So he would always say to me, hey, I want you to kind of keep us centered, keep us spiritually centered. And they were. It was kind of a crazy culture a little bit. They didn't play by a lot of church rules, including staff. And so, but solid Christians with very few rules. And so it was different. And I didn't love some of the environment, but I trusted the weekends and ultimately trusted the heart, especially at first. So eventually, as it got bigger and bigger, there became this sense of access to pretty nationally known leaders out there. And so some of these leaders would be on the fringes of Christianity. Now, here's where it gets to path, okay? The path to follow Jesus, we talk about narrow is the road to follow Jesus. Well, let's just say the path is fairly wide when it comes to different branches, styles, variables, expressions of the faith. There's a lot that might not be my flavor that still fit the path of Jesus. They're still focused in following Jesus. And so there's these people on a lot of variations. Well, we would bring in these people who would be probably on the edge of what is still considered Christendom, but probably not like traditional beliefs of Christianity, whether it was just how you express your faith, issues of governance, issues of traditional view of holiness, issues of sexuality, issues of Bible interpretation, issues of all sorts of things that are part of anybody's faith at whatever level. There's different, degrees of, whether it's on a view that's not widespread. Well, you'd have people who now they're off the beaten path. Well, then our leader would listen to this and process this, and then he would go on what I would call a rabbit trail, where just say, okay, well, if this could be true, then what if this could be true, which would not be something someone within the Christendom would say is still on the path. So I remember we'd have conversations. I'd say, hey, I just feel like I can't fully support the direction we're going. I feel like ultimately for me, scripture is a big deal. Like that is the path. And I feel like now we're getting off the path. So that's the question. Have you ever been in an organization that was clearly on the path that got off? I felt at that time, and I wasn't like anti the organization. Loved the organization, loved the leader. But for me, my clear conversations with the leader was, you are no longer looking for me to help guard us and keep us on the path, which was one of my roles that you gave to me when I came on the team. You have now valued experimentation with faith more than the path that we're on towards Jesus. And that now Jesus becomes one way of expressing faith instead of the way. And the Bible is one way to discover faith as a story, as opposed to this is the best record we have of who Jesus is, and Jesus is the revelation of who God is. And so I'm like, man, this is a rabbit trail that gets off the path. And it doesn't mean you can't find your way to Jesus, and it doesn't mean you can't be a follower of Jesus, but I feel like it's a dangerous pathway because now you're getting off of some of the very few things that we have that kind of mark the trail, and that is Scripture, and that is history. And again, we have to have a good interpretation of it. So anyway, we became open, praying. Leanna and I made a commitment. We said, hey, we just believe that our time here is done because we don't believe in the path. We believe this is getting off the path. And now I wasn't concerned that they weren't going to. I just didn't like the distraction. I felt like the things that there was more curiosity about wasn't beneficial to following Jesus. It was more curiosity about, well, how do we know this is true? And what if things that were unnecessary that you're like, man, these could be rabbit trails that make you more interested in tangents than Jesus. And so in that time we said, okay, God, we just pray that you're going to open up a different opportunity. The next day is when I got a call from North Point. And so it's interesting to me. That was a miracle. Like, I'm like, yeah, God, I'm so trusting that you're leading me here. Well, watching this journey, I was still connected from a board level for a while, and then just friendships because I had hired so many of the team and really had looked up to the leader. They ended up going from 8 campuses, 0 campuses, 5,000 people to 0 people. And not that that's the, every church dies. All of Paul's churches, I think, are dead at this point, but from Scripture. But the tragedy is there's a huge need in the Seattle area for a church like that. And what happened is they allowed this rabbit trail to get them off the path of following Jesus, and Jesus became not the primary focus. And then all of a sudden, they wake up one day and they're no longer on the path. Good people. And then several of my friends who have always been on the path for a long time of following Jesus, several of them, got off the path. Now, because of that, probably because they all decided at the same time. So I kind of feel like that was the direction that they went as a crew. I would look at that and I would say, that's a great example of an organization, in this case, a church, that was so effective at helping people follow Jesus and find Jesus. And all of a sudden now it's no longer a church, no longer helping people find and follow Jesus because they chased a rabbit trail of new curiosity. Not that curiosity is bad, but curiosity, an interest in things that aren't the main thing. When that becomes more exciting than the main thing, which is following Jesus, I think that's what killed it.
I mean, you've told me a lot about this story just as our years. And one of the things that I hear when you talk about this is the obsession with the path of Jesus that they were on as a team, right?
Passionate.
And not necessarily these, like when you talk about curiosity or you talk about doubt or you talk about questioning, it's not necessarily that those are the things that's like, don't be curious.
No, 100%.
But it's almost like whenever I listen to you tell these stories, like that became the path.
Yes.
Like, wait, no, curiosity is a tool for the path, not the path in and of itself.
Curiosity should help you find the path.
Absolutely, right?
But when you value different over the path, and now you resent the path because other people walk down it, which is the definition of a path, and you value different over the path, just because it's historical doesn't mean it's not real.
That's awesome. Wait, people have been here before.
Yes.
Let's get out of here.
So, but watch that. That's just a big deal. Is when you do value, all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're going down the path, but we're doing it in different methods. Well, it's cool, but we're still going down the path. But we found ourselves becoming arrogant that we're coming down this path a different way. And if you're not careful, the arrogance in doing it a different way, all of a sudden when other people start doing it a different way as well, and it's working for them, then you're like, well, do we value the path we're on and we're glad other people are doing it this way and we don't need to be cool and new anymore? Or do we like, wait a second, here's another way we can be new. What if we take a new path and we become a trailblazer, not trying to follow Jesus, not even trying to find Jesus? And now here's what's crazy. Here's what's good about God. God can use any of these trails and bring people to him. Otherwise you become, but I don't believe that getting bored with the path, and here's the deal. Sometimes we can look at that and we can say, was that a cult? A lot of people ask me, was that a cult that you were part of? Yes. I would say that. And I say that because using a ton of very effective leadership that eventually leads people off the path of following Jesus. That's how I would define that. And to me, that would be a cult. A cult is any time, I don't think a cult is taking people who aren't on the path and don't want to be on the path and taking them on a walk. A cult is when people are on the path and you connect with them because of their desire to be on the path and you take them off of the path and they don't know that they're going off the path. You don't say, hey guys, we're done doing this. We're going to a different path. That's an invitation. But when you say, yeah, we're still on this path, we're just going to go this way, that's a cult. And when you end up having a mass amount of people who leave the path of following Jesus, it's not because they all woke up one day and independently arrived at that conclusion. So I think, yes, that's a cult. At the same time, it's interesting because I also learned in that people I love greatly, people I respect. So for me, a cult isn't a bunch of people who are whack jobs out there who have this weird motive. It's anybody who leaves the path, but using some of the influence and leadership that they used while they were on the path. So it seems like it's a seamless same trail when it's not the same trail at all. So when we talk about pathways, we're not talking about here's the 5 things North Point brings to the table that are different. If you do these investigation pathways, we're talking historical things that will help you follow Jesus. And if these things lead you away from North Point, cool. I'd rather your path to follow Jesus lead you away from North Point than your path following North Point's leader lead you away from following Jesus. Because we see that. And it's not even bad things. Like some Christian culture would look at, Christian culture never liked our church. They thought we were a cult because we were doing different methods at Eastlake. And probably at North Point too, at different times of history. It was so different, right? The volume of music, the style of presentation. That's so crazy. Are you guys a cult? Are you even a Christian church? Well, it's because the methods are different. Christian culture has a problem with methods historically that are different. And when I was at Eastlake, people thought we were a cult all the time because we were doing different methods. And we weren't. It was a Jesus-loving, Jesus-following church. But when we started playing Rubik's Cube with the journey towards Jesus and going on a rabbit trail, that's when it became a cult. Well, it's easy for Christian culture to look at that and say, well, we always knew they were a cult. And I got to tell you, I was on the inside. We were not. But here's what's crazy. What Christian culture doesn't recognize is when Christian culture churches go down the wrong path. Because
so talk about that, like an overemphasis of
anything outside of Jesus.
And what about an overemphasis on something that even has Jesus' name attached to it?
I think those are the scariest types of cults. Because, like for real, is an overemphasis on healing, an overemphasis on prophecy, an overemphasis on generosity that goes towards a church, an overemphasis on holiness, an overemphasis on legalism, an overemphasis on anything. Those are rabbit trails that take you away from the path of following Jesus. There are a lot of people who used to follow Jesus, but because of an overemphasis on legalism, that's a side trail. And can you find Christ through holiness? Yes. The law was my schoolmaster. It brought me to Christ. So yes, I can see how that can, I believe in holiness, but I believe holiness is a reflection of after finding Christ, not a pursuit to be approved by Christ.
Well, and it's also not the point.
It isn't the point. Otherwise, it's just about being moral.
And it's also a means, right? Like
yes.
When somebody's like, well, that's the church about morality. It's like, what about Jesus? No, they get to Jesus through morality. It's morality. Yeah. It's morality. It's legalism. It's this. It's this. But what about like, you have to go through this. This is what you have. This is what he has. Same thing when you talk about like with a healing thing or with a prophecy thing or with even a generosity thing where it's like, this is the way you give. It's just giving through giving, right?
Yep.
It says in the Bible, test me. It says it one time. It says test me. Like there's those elements to it. So if somebody, just talk about that. Walk through that.
Yeah. So here's the deal. Any type of Christian community should be focused on following Christ. We should have pathways to Christ. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have curiosity and interest in other things. And again, that wasn't the demise of the church I was at before, is curiosity. The demise was not having guardrails for the path that you're on. There's a path for a reason, right? And the boundaries are, am I following Jesus or not? And sometimes in the name of Christ, we can follow weird dismisses it for some people. They'll say, I don't believe in it. I believe in things that are on the fringe, aren't vital to Christianity. Miracles are not vital to Christianity. Like I could never see another miracle of God and I could be a follower of Jesus Christ. I could not believe in miracles today and I can still be a follower of Jesus Christ. Now, because I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, nothing should surprise me, in miracles. But at the same time is all of a sudden I can get into this weird headspace or belief that I can demand this and this. And all of a sudden, even a Christian sounding thing becomes my God. And I wake up one day and realize I haven't been following Jesus. I haven't been following the giver. I've been following the gift. I'm now all of a sudden, I don't know where I'm at. I think I'm lost. And what's crazy is I was very churched. Everyone in my life thinks I'm over churched. And I look around and I'm lost and I don't even know when the trail stopped. And here's the deal. Prophecy is a dangerous thing. And I know that's a big deal around here. I've had a ton of conversations. Hey, Jerry, what do you think about, and I don't want to get into it because I'm not into because I believe in Christendom, there's churches that are going to be closed to anything that's at all feels charismatic. And then there's going to be churches that are very prophetic and charismatic. And I think they all fit within the Christendom and they all have a place on the path. I think they do. So the last thing I want to do is insert myself into, hey, this doesn't fit. This isn't the right church. But I will say in any pursuit, including prophetic things that sound very spiritual, that actually could be a very dangerous path when all of a sudden now I've got to, anytime I need a new word, bottom line, we're all using the same playbook. Okay. And so if it's a new word, it's probably not true. It's the same idea. I need new. Why do you need new? We've got a whole thick book right there. So anytime the word of God isn't fresh enough for my life, and now I need to go find someone to give me their version of inspiration or prophecy for my life, that's a dangerous path that, while I do believe God can use other voices that align with his word to help me on my path. That's why I don't want to dismiss the prophetic, but when it becomes a focus, it's off the path. It's off the path. Any focus other than Jesus is off the path. So like North Point, so it's easy to talk about what I've been a part of or things that we see around us. North Point, here's our biggest danger is when we be like, our style of music, man, this is our style of music. This is what we do. This is how we do it. And any other church that doesn't do it this way, why do even people go there? You're off the path. Preferences could take me off the path. Anything that I can wake up one day and be like, I don't think I've been following Jesus, but I've been spending a lot of time in a group that I thought I was. I thought I was on a journey, but right now I can't see Jesus. It means we're off the path. And so when we talk about a series on pathways, what we're hoping is true for a lot of people is that if you do these things, you're going to see Jesus. And that when something sounds too peripheral, we recognize it. And we're not enchanted by it's new, it's different, it's cool, it's unique. But we're actually nervous. Anything that's super new and I don't want to be critical of new things, because then I go back to the Christian culture that didn't like the church that was so effective in Seattle. Mm-hmm. But I also want to be very aware that, listen, let all the things, you can have your preferences, you can have those things, those are fine. But if Jesus is the center, it's him sent by God, crucified, risen, and exalted. And does he become the center part of it? And I ask myself this often, do I put too much of Jeremy into my message? Do I put too much of my interest and my curiosity? Because I have that. And I don't want to separate me from my message because I am a messenger. But at the same time, I have to ask myself often, there's been seasons where I'm like, man, I don't know that I made too much of Jesus during that series or during that message. And that's something that I would be nervous about. And what I want North Pointers to think is, are we driving you to hear from Jesus? That's why we exist. That's our mission. The moment we stop focusing on Jesus, then run, like for real. It is not my goal that North Point exists in 5 years. Now, because it's my job, it's on my scoreboard right now. Okay. But like, I'm not holding tightly to like North Point must exist, because churches could exist long after they focus on Jesus. It's just pointless. My hope in 5 years is that anybody who came along our path was introduced and pointed in the direction of Jesus. That's what we want to do. So we want to be centered.
Well, I think for me, the most important thing you said is focusing on the gift, not the giver.
Yeah.
Right. And it reminds me too of, are you taking classes on one-liners right now? Because they are hot right now. I mean, you have got like a pile of them and you're just like whipping them out. That's a good one there. But I also thought, and you can use this one, but I thought, when you're talking about, am I putting too much Jeremy in this message? I think you've seen it. I think you've seen the danger of it, of following the leader and not the Lord as well, right? You can use that one. You can have
you're
it.
Like
write
a
it down.
one-liner
Write it down.
dispenser.
Write it down. But it's true. Like what? There is a leader-focused element when you're talking about East Lake, and you're talking about, and what's gross about it? Not gross. I don't.
Yeah,
it is.
It's gross.
It's gross.
We're trying to filter because we're being recorded.
You can talk about the Old Testament and about how, Moses was the leader and he took all of these people and they just listened to Moses and they didn't even need, the leader he's the Lord's mouthpiece, right?
Yeah.
I think you have a sensitivity to that, which is why I think it's so effective when you speak that people can be like, whoa, he's talking to me, right? And they can be across the board of EBOT, right? Exploring to thriving. They can hear Jesus in that, because I do think you have a sensitivity to that. And you also have a sensitivity to gifts and the giver, right? Making sure, what does that look like to actually follow the giver and not the gift? Because, oh my goodness, I am so guilty of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many times I can think of I don't even say thank you to the giver. I just say thank you and focus on the gift, right? So I just think that's very helpful.
Which is worship, right? That's why worship isn't about, and I can worship by saying thank you for what you've done, but worship is more than just thanking God for what he's done. It's not even hinting to God for what he will do. It's just acknowledging God for who he is.
I'll worship you because of what you're going to do.
Yeah, it's going to be good, right? You remember my need, right?
But I'm worshiping you, man.
But it's just, this is who you are. And here's the danger. The more charismatic the leader, the more personality driven the leader is. It's dangerous. And I'm not saying leaders should not have a personality. I also know that my personality sometimes is my greatest strength and sometimes could be an obstacle, because my personality could be distracting, especially when I'm not focused on using it but I'm just focused on using it. But here's the deal. When I, as a leader, I need to understand the responsibility. And when the responsibility benefits me, and when I am authoritative, when I am defensive, those are the red flags that you're in a cult called North Point. And run. Just run. There should be humility from the leadership. It should be Jesus-centered. That's what we need to do. The pathway is Jesus. The pathway is not me as a pastor. The pathway is not our cool new methods. The pathway is not even these fringe expressions of faith, right? I mean, and fringe expressions of faith, whether it's on the charismatic end or it's on the super progressive end, is to me, what makes you on the path is, are you following Jesus? If you're following Jesus and there's some fringe elements there, call me curious, right? But the moment that becomes a focus, I believe you're following the wrong trail. It becomes politics. We haven't even talked about politics. 100%. Politics becomes a big rabbit trail. For sure. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't be politically passionate. But bottom line is, I've seen a lot of people follow that trail and now they're not following Jesus. They think they are because they're following this different path, and the path of Jesus, man. That who we want to be more like him. So identify, on the EBOT, exploring, becoming, owning, thriving. Where are you at in Jesus? I hope that whether it's through the resources, through the programming, through the gatherings, we hope that you're able to see him. We hope that they help you realign and readjust and find community, perhaps, that helps you live that out, because ultimately we want to be on his path. So,
that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
all right.
We're on a path to be at like 40 minutes right now. So
we got to get off that because that's called a rabbit trail.
Yeah, all right.
So, all right. Thanks for listening to another episode of The Riff. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.